Plants, or microscopic plants are food for zooplankton, which is then food for fish. The insects that feed on bigger plants can then be food for fish are food for everything else. So it's a very complex interwoven web. Without those plants, you lose the vital component of that food web. And then when we talk about invasive species, when invasive species come in and play with that food web, damage or change it in some way, then again we've created this cascading effect that could potentially not be able to be repaired. So by zebra mussels removing zooplankton, you're removing parts of these food webs that can't be replaced. So the value is very important. Please advance. And here I have an illustration of the types of plants we have growing. And you know these just from seeing them, but we talked about emergent plants, which are on the very edge, floating leaf, down to submergent. They all take up their very special, unique places. You can't have the submergent in shallow areas, and you can't have the shoreline plants in deeper. They're very obligatory. They need their certain depth of water and the conditions in that water. So when you remove a cattail in one spot, you can't just think, well, there's lots of water that it can be. No, that's not accurate. It can only be in very specific places. And the benefits, again, sorry. You're going to try and read my mind. The benefits, again, quickly, I'll go through them in more detail, but you can see right there a quick overview of those. Okay, you can go ahead. I'll start into the plants found. So there are very, very many plants found in the bottomland itself. When we do plant surveys, we talk about the abundance of plants, and actually very good. I want to see high abundance. It's a healthy lake with high abundance. I want to see distribution. I want to see them in all places they can grow. They talk about the littoral zone or the littoral zone, however you want to pronounce that word. That's the area of the lake 15 feet or less that plants can grow. That is their zone. They don't grow. I do plant surveys when you kind of look for that deepest depth, and in some clear lakes it can be a little deeper, but on average it's around 15 feet. They can't grow in 30 feet of water. There's not enough light, and the farther down you go, the less wavelength exists. So plants can't use light at certain depths if it's there. And then of course it's not there by, I think,
80 feet.
80 feet. And then by, it's surprising, by a certain number of feet, there's only like 0.1% of light left, right? So plants can only grow here. It's very important to protect that habitat, which is why we have limits on what you can do within aquatic plant management. But also, with abundance in the group distribution, I look at richness. When I talk about species richness, it's the diversity of a lake. And I like to have people think of or imagine diversity as something on land that you can all kind of see and relate to. If a forest was all one species, imagine it was all one species of oak tree. An oak tree came in and killed, or oak will came in and killed all those oak trees. You'd no longer have a forest. You have no, the diversity buffers the system against pests, diseases, use, predation, all those different things. So it's very important to have very rich diversity. And you can see, you don't have to read them, they're super tiny. I just want to put them all up here. This is a combination of a couple different surveys. There was the first one done on the shoreline in 06, and then the Lake Association's done 11, 14, 18, and 23. And I looked, and some surveys didn't capture some species. So I had to put them all together, and that's the limitation of surveys. And then as biologists, you know that when you look at these surveys and interpret them, you got to know that they might not catch all the species. So put them all together, and the richness here is amazing. In here you have the different areas where we talked about emergent, floating, and submergent. So these would be all emergent and then the submergent ones. And we can talk in a little bit more depth about some of these species we have. And the fun things about them, just what Sharon had found at the softball campus. They're just fun things that I like to get you excited about them, like I get excited about them. So this is a pond, I'm going to use its scientific name. Scientific name for the is a flat stem pond, the fun thing about this one is it makes a winter winter bud. And here you can see that. Now further on later in the year, you won't be able to see these anymore because they'll degrade. But what happens in the fall is they make these little winter buds that harden up and fall to the bottom or float around. And I'll talk about the variability of plants a little later in the slide, but this will start rooting the next year, and then new growth forms off that. So it's its seed, and it's a fun little winter bud, and I love to see them. Actually, the project we're doing, have you ever talked about the project we're doing? The burnout project we're doing on the Stars of the North, so with public access. These have floated around already and popped onto it and started rooting, and that's exactly what I want to have. So there's this one that's pretty special and unique, and then actually northern water milfoil makes a turion as well. So come take a look at these plants when you get a chance. So this will harden off and fall to the bottom and then start growing off the following year. A lot of plants are either, well not a lot of plants, all the plants are either perennial or annual. And just like in a garden, perennial comes in the fall, comes back next year. Some don't have that at all, and they only propagate by seed. Some actually have stolons, so they're propagating vegetatively, and if a piece breaks off, they can revegetate that way too. So they move in various different ways, a lot like twister plants, right? Okay, I went. I have a lot, I can say a lot. And I want to take questions. So this is just a quick illustration, actually. The main handouts, put this on the website if you want, of a complex interaction of all these different benefits that aquatic plants play and how they're in the center. Now, my past history was 9 years in shallow lakes, and that is a very sensitive system when they lose their aquatic plants, so it's very obvious. They'll switch to a turbid state immediately. And that those systems have less to buffer themselves with because they're shallower and they're no more than 15 feet deep. So it becomes super obvious this role they play. But you know, you could see habitat, food, shelter, keeps the turbidity down, keeps the sediments in place, tons of good things. And then we'll go into some dog meeting. Okay, this is more to remind me. I only had a short time to put it together. We were doing this today. Sorry about that. But food to many different things, even us as humans. And you think about a lake, you think about the things in the lake. But what about the things out of the lake too? The lake provides food and water and shelter and resource to all the different things around us in the ecosystem on the landscape. So these seeds, tubers, roots, turions, the insects on them, ducks would not be able to survive, obviously waterfowl. They are dependent on the lake ecosystem for all of their needs. I think that is very important to highlight. Bulrushes, water celery, I know and we'll talk a little bit more on the slide in depth about that one. There's an increase in water celery. It's one of the most important duck foods. If you did not know that, as well as carob, which you call we might call skunk grass or musk grass. One smells really strong, you can pull it out. Kind of creates a mat. Very, very, very beneficial plant. It's not going to be macroalgae. If you notice in the fall, it'll make these little tiny, they're not seeds because it's an algae, called goniae. Hundreds of thousands have been found in migrating duck bellies. They eat those for energy before they migrate. Songbird, obviously, the habitat involved and the building structure for houses is kind of on the wrong side. But even the clams, when we talk about zebra mussels and how they can kill off the clams by smothering or taking their food, clams are a very important resource to our fur bearers. Muskrats, otters. Without those, you're taking away food for them. And of course, human use in the past history, there's tons of human use on human food use and materials of resource on lake and plants. Go ahead. Just an illustration. It's a simple one, right? But I want to remind you of how many different species exist in each class. Because you might have a snail here, but there's actually like 30 different snails that we have. So this is very simplistic, but each different thing, ducks, we have, I have a slide with an illustration of the shorebirds. So it's so complex and important. Now, mosquitoes make us. A lot of insects, though, you did not notice, have a life cycle in water. So our beautiful dragonflies, our damselflies, those all have a life cycle within water. They actually spend a few years, and they hunt under the water before they emerge. Go ahead. Home for lots of things, right? And I don't think I have to tell you what they're home for, so don't worry about it. But I've covered the health of the supplies for fluff for nests, and actually a fun thing in my mind that's on the slide, when you look at caddisflies, there's so many different kinds of caddisflies. They're just a little fly that flies underwater and emerges. It builds its houses, which are this big. You might see them sticking on your dock. They're these weird little short sticks that look like they're just stuck all over. Those are caddisflies in there, and they build their houses out of plant material. So they're actually inside there, and there's a couple different ones. They use leaves, they use sticks, and these are specific species of them that use different materials. And then the rest is pretty much the same about the different things too. So anyway, just illustrating, I talked about waterfowl. Shorebirds, waterfowl, these are all migratory out of lakes and wetlands. That's a lot of them. You might think, oh, a duck. There's so many different species. And when you think about mammals, indirectly or directly, they're all using the resource in some way. Whether it be they're feeding on an animal that uses the lake, or they're feeding right directly from the lake. So important to remember. Of course, we have our otters and meat that are reliant on it. This is a very important process of plants too, is the nutrients, so improving lake water quality and clarity. Without these, and again, very obvious in shallow lakes what happens when you lose these. So they absorb oxygen. They break down, low rushes break down contaminants in water. Did not know that. Of course, they absorb excess nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus. One of the quick facts is 1 pound of phosphorus is 5 pounds of algae growth. Now, if you didn't have any plants, guess what's going to grow? And again, very obvious in a shallow lake, that especially in warmer weather, you can see how they turn completely green and algae covered. And a lot of those don't have any plants. I've surveyed those for 9 years, and there would be many without plants at all. So, and then there's other reasons why plants don't exist, nutrient loading and carb problems and things like that. But that's very good. Erosion control on the shorelines. That's why we encourage the use of natural shorelines, don't remove trees or things. Those roots are holding everything in place. The wind and wave action and energy from that can basically cut away at shorelines. So they're very important for that, and also within the lake itself, holding down the sediments. I just started doing our project there at Long Lake these last month. And I know this happens, but the clarity when we found it was like I could at 10 feet just look from the bottom and see details of plants. That's how clear it can get. You can see a second disc, sure, but I'm talking crystal clarity. And while we're doing the project, it's murky. Well, we're in turnover, plants started growing, they're just getting the roots in and making everything stay down. And of course, we've had a lot of rain, input, wind. So you can see that really obviously in this period of the year where they're not fully established yet. And then of course, when I talk about invasives, I talk about when you take plants out, you've opened up a spot for an invasive to establish. Because the invasive will take advantage of those severe spots with competition from our native plants, it has a harder time. So it says these native plants resist invasion. They're buffering, they're holding their own right against any invasive plant. And you don't want to clear a spot and keep it clear and invite one, because invasives have some form or method of survival tactic that make them better at reproducing, growing, what have you, than our natives do. So they'll take advantage of their own spot. Of course, the beauty of a lake, I think a lot of people, when there's that question that came up about why is Long Lake valuable, that beauty component is very important. The sunsets over the lake or what have you. And it's not to be diminish, right, that value, that importance to us as our mental health, our well-being, to incorporate that into the value. Go ahead. And economics, this is always brought up, but as an actual, the water plants being the base of everything, right? And you talk about water clarity, water quality, the value, or what we put the value of a lake on, especially a nice swimming lake or, a nice fishing lake. People want to be on it, people want to buy on it, and it drives up prices and what have you. And so when you think about it indirectly, plants will determine, if you will, the quality or the value, economic value of that lake. Go ahead. So there are a lot of questions, why more plants? There could be many factors. It's really hard to pinpoint. In an open system, a lake's ecosystem, it's really hard to just pinpoint one thing and say that's it. Because there's many factors going on. It could be nutrients. We were in drought for a while, right? And now we're coming out of drought. We've got a lot of rain, a lot of nutrient input that wasn't there before. So that could be, an increase in plant growth, for sure. Weather, well, kind of like the drought and the rainfall, absolutely encourages differences. But not only that, what about our biowinters? So when you think about not just plants, but invasive species, I had a lady call me about mystery snail, and I got this year so many mystery snail. Well, we had a pretty mild winter, and winter does do something to control population when you look at ticks, right? If the winter's mild, it doesn't keep off ticks, and then you have a boom year and ticks are just building. Same thing with mystery snails, same thing with plants though. They have a chance to do better right off the gate. Some of our native plants even did not die back. We went out, ice, ice was early. We didn't have much ice, but when our specialists were out right after that time period, it's like, whoa, we have plants already. What's going on? And then they started flowering like a month later. They're not supposed to flower yet. So they were going right off the gate and growing actually from plant material that didn't completely die. And imagine if that was in the case. Of course, human activities can change the amount of plants and human activities more being so, like land use, what's changed on the landscape and the watershed, that type of thing. It could be, what's going on shoreline septics, all that type of activity. And then what can you do to minimize your effect on these factors causing more plants is definitely implement pest management on your own property in your own way. So keep your shoreline plants, don't fertilize, don't go down the lawn, all those pest management practices, making sure your septics are up to date and things of that nature. This is a couple of surveys. This is actually a diagram in the latest survey, and this, I just wanted to make a thought on what I see when I see this. What I see is variability. And plants are very variable. They move around, like I told you with their seeds or what have you. They're not always going to be in the same place, and that's okay. They won't take a habitat that don't like, right? You won't see a bull rush in the muck all of a sudden. That won't happen. But they can move around the lake and grow in different places or expand in different places. But they do cycle, like everything in the natural world kind of goes up and down, like the links in the hair. Have you ever heard that? Where, there's lots of foods, lots of links, and then no more food and no more links. So it's kind of the same thing, those cycle down. And I wanted to point out how in the middle, they're all low. Well, what was going on in our weather, in our climate, in that middle period of time, so for everything to be low. And then some decreased and some increased. So can you pinpoint what exactly is going on? Not so much. And then I also want to say that surveys don't always capture, like the first slide, surveys don't always capture everything. So it's possible the methods of these surveys differ a teeny bit. So where the points were on the same habitats or things. So this doesn't scare me because I go back to thinking about abundance, diversity, richness, and distribution. Now, are all those things lake-wide? Do I still have those things intact? Oh, we do. So then I'm not so worried about which plant is doing better or which is worse. They're all still here. Water celery is the one really, from its beginning to now is doing the best. But again, very, very important. From source for water level. Canvas bag, and there's my notes. If I don't get it right, read it to me. So canvas bags, their scientific name actually uses the scientific name of water celery in its, because of the importance of water celery to canvas bags. They will follow their migration to where beds of wild celery are doing well in lakes. Not in just a lake, but in different lakes. That's how important it is to that waterfowl species. Management. So we can kind of skip over this. There's APM rules that you can, I'm not skip, go fast. There's APM rules that what you can and cannot do for removal of plants in a lake. Any of these require a permit. The easiest is just to call a specialist and go through it. So you can't put chemical in it at all without a permit. You can't destroy shoreline vegetation, things of that nature. And then go to the next slide, because this one is most important. Yeah, we're not allowed to do any of these things, not even with a permit. No hydraulic jets is a new thing on the horizon. A lot of times manufacturers will come up with things that they think, oh, cool, look at this. Just because they make it does not always mean it's allowed in the state of Minnesota, or allowed in any state for that matter, or that it's healthy for a lake ecosystem. So keep that in mind. Those jets, they're not a good idea at all. And then fish spawning, undeveloped shorelines, things of that. But you can go to the next one. What you can do without a permit is every landowner for use and access is allowed 2,500 square feet of area to clear by mechanical means. That means hand raking or pulling out the vegetation. If any chemical touches the water, it does have to have a permit. If any shoreline vegetation is cleared, it does have to have a permit. And then, of course, there's length restrictions. Again, call your area specialist. And here is Bob Ekstrom. You can call me and I can get in touch with him if that's what you want to do. Now, I did look because I was worried. Long Lake is doing really great. There's only 6 active APM permits for the entire lake. That's really, really low. And that means there's only 6 permits requiring, or doing an activity requiring a permit, right? So one of them I looked was mechanical, one of them was weed roller, 2 of them were weed roller, one of them was a pesticide. So Long Lake's doing very good at minimizing those activities. And then when they're getting the permit and doing it correctly. We do have a 50% littoral limit on the destruction in order to protect habitat. But the more habitat there is, the better. We just put that limit there to say, okay, go over that, then you're going into decline, right? So none is ideal. So don't think of that like, oh, we're allowed that. So none is ideal, and then at a certain point, you start crashing your own limit. Okay. That's not very
Come back to me. I have an AIS question.
Okay.
I've been seeing tons of ads on Facebook for all these chemical things, and we got a mailer in the mail postcard, and it's like, why can these guys be allowed to advertise if we're not supposed to be doing that stuff?
Right. Well, they're for profit, so they're going to advertise.
Repeat the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why? So she's getting a lot of ads. She sees ads on Facebook for removal or chemical. Come clear your plants. I've seen them too on Facebook, and then I see them and I think, oh, you better make sure you don't need a permit for that. There are companies that will play to that. Every landowner gets 2,500 square feet for, That doesn't mean you should be doing it. Does it mean you need to do it? No. Not everyone has to do that or needs to, but they'll play to that, or it should be. And the chemical, for sure, they shouldn't be. And we cannot stop them from advertising as a private business. We cannot stop them from doing their business. And we can only put our regulations on, and of course we need a permit. So if a permit comes in for that activity, then it will be regulated, and that way. Now, if you see something happening that don't think has a permit, then to enforce it, we have to know right away. Because unfortunately, it's hard to prove, track, gather evidence on that activity that happens. So somebody that's coming along and gives us the plans, whoop, after it's done, no, I didn't. Well, all right, well, there's no plans here. Well, you can't tell me there weren't plans here before. You know, it was buried before. So if you do see that it should be happening, we do need to know about that. The mechanical, there are companies that will go, like the harvesters, they'll actually go pop into every person's spot. They'll look at contracts and then pop in. And it's not against, they can.
You were talking about 50 feet being a limit for clearing, right?
There's a limit on length of shoreline if you use that 2,500 square feet.
But what I was thinking is, we have 50-foot lots in a lot of volume.
Oh, no,
If
you're not.
everybody is clearing 50 feet, it's going to be clear the whole way.
If you don't have 100, at least, then you can't do 50. It's half of the length of an individual person's shoreline. So if you only have 50, you can't do 50. So I think that where that was worded might be a little confusing. And I know Bob actually would say, well, you have to have at least a minimum of 100 feet to start clearing out half year. And he will limit you based on the size of your plot. So yeah, and again, if everyone keeps doing half their plot, that's still bad, right? All the loss of that native emergent vegetation, the cattails, the songbirds using it, the ducks nesting in it, the loons nesting in it, you know, it's actually energy it absorbs on the shoreline. Yeah, the loss of that's very important. It's in bulrush and cattail, and I know it's kind of silly because you see areas of the invasive cattail that seems to grow everywhere. Well, you know, when you take out that native cattail, it doesn't do a great job of coming back. Bulrush at all. So you don't want to say go away and just replace it because it's almost impossible to come back. That was my question.
Yeah, define evidence. So for example, where we live on the lake, every once in a while we'll see huge gobs of weeds, stuff that people pulled out, so lily pad structure, whatever. Do you know kind of where it's coming from? I mean, do you have to have like pictures or?
The plants up on the shoreline itself, would it be, and because that happens naturally. We have one bushy boundary is called as an iron. That one breaks. It's a weak little stem. It breaks by, you know, strong wind, and it's broken and floating away into big mass. So water soluble involved.
Like big root structures floating by.
You need a picture of the person doing it at the spot that they're doing it, because that can happen too. You know, they get dislodged, uprooted. Boat owners can do that, and that's not, you know, illegal if the boat goes through a place. But they're probably. Anyone else have any questions?
So, off topic a little bit, but you are also the aquatic invasive species specialist.
Yeah.
And so care to opine about the fact that we saw zebra mussels 4 years ago and have seen nothing since, what you would make of that?
That's not especially accurate. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, I show of hands, who has seen zebra mussels at their dock or in their water? There's one person in there, so they took out their equipment and saw them out there. Where are they? I don't know where they're not going to raise their hand now. Okay, so we saw 3 at the public access when it was infested. The survey of 23 actually had 3 in the boat that had fallen off of aquatic plants. When they start, from my experience, anecdotally, observationally, when they start clasping to aquatic plants, there's a lot of them wherever they're at. So they're like just grabbing onto things. They're free floating, so when they fall down, they're just going to start to connect. So the aquatic plants are falling off. And then, yeah, we had a comment here today saying the person saw them on equipment in But
Did they say where that was?
I did not know. But it's not unusual to not see them. Talk about some examples that we've had villagers, we've had adults, and we haven't seen anymore for a long time or since. There is Picker Lake in DL in 2014, a large adult, at least 1.5 inches, was found. And in 2016, we scuba dived and found another large adult all the way across the lake. Now, geographically isolated from each other, they need to be near each other to fertilize. No others have been found since, no landowners complaining of them, they're just, I don't know, maybe those different ones that were in there, and I know we did not find the only two in that lake. You know, when you think about the value of water in this basin, the area of acreage, and what you're actually looking at when you scuba dive, it's a little tiny spot. So those ones in there, any of them, maybe they were geographically isolated, so they didn't have juveniles or reproduced, and the HFS died off. They'll only live 4 to 5 years, and then the HFS dies off. So possibility. Now Garfield Lake, right here in Hubbard, it's had villagers a couple of different years. No adults have been reported yet. Leech Lake, it took 3 years after the first were found for an explosion. I got a call 1 year from a person on Lake Notona who had actually been listed and vested, like it was 12, and I think I got the call in, I don't know, 17. But that year they were calling in to report, oh my gosh, I have zebra mussels. And I was like, oh, yeah, we've had them since 2012. You know, so they're hard to find. Even when we look at developers sampling and settling plates, those are random places to check. They're not going to be there all the time, right? So you're literally taking a whole, if you think of Long Lake and all the surface acreage, and then you sample the 1 foot diameter column into the water, it's even less than a needle in a haystack at that point. So it's not, by not finding them, it's not saying positively we don't have any. It's just saying when we checked that 1 foot diameter value, there wasn't any there. But you keep doing it year after year after year, and then you can compile all that information. Like, okay, well, all right, now I'm not seeing any. They do have an exponential growth curve. I talked about the geographic isolation and what have you. When they get to a certain density, then they start reproducing more efficiently, if you will, and then the population will explode into everywhere. But they do have a plateau. They do have a carrying capacity. So it won't just continually keep going. It will get to a point where they're using all the resources available to them, and then it will drop back down and then level out.
We have a lot of resources though, right? And also the baby, so to speak, zebra mussels are clear.
But
Right. So there's a lot going on that we can't see.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Did that answer